So we turn our attention to the first Kipco British Champion Series race at the Ebor Festival. It is the International Stakes. And Chris, what a race it promises to be. Some of the finest performances, middle distance performances we've seen this year are form lines going into this race. And one of them, the best of them, is the Eclipse, which we saw at Sandown last month. The first thing to pick up here from the stalls, they're scrimmaging early to get positions. Aidan O'Brien's Taj Mahal comes across to try and make it here. Cliff Samoa goes up on the rail, but there's a few trying to get prominent, the likes of Eminent, the likes of Decorated Knight in the green, and it gets a bit messy early on.
It gets very messy, and Cliffs of Moher is very badly hampered here, and it kind of ruins his chance of getting properly competitive in the race. So far as he's concerned, you would probably scratch this run, and this is why you'll see in a second as Taj Mahal just tightens up Decorated Knight a little bit. Decorated Knight tightens up Cliffs of Moher, and he loses momentum and ground, having got himself into what was probably a pretty good early position.
And what you can see actually at the back of the shot in the grey, not highlighted there, two horses, Barney Roy and Ulysses, who are away from the early melee. That really is a good old hampering and a half to Cliffs of Moher, and that really puts to bed his chances. We'll pick it up then as they turn for home, and if we roll it along, you can see that not a great deal has changed position-wise, but again, the two that are racing too wide and don't hit any problem as far as getting out goes, Barney Roy in the all blue of Godolphin, and tracking him through all the way, Ulysses, who shows that he loves it here at Sandown.
Yeah, he does. I think these are the best two horses in the race, whichever way you look at it, for all that they did get those clear passages through and everything. What I love about the way that Ulysses goes through this race is how comfortably he does everything. Barney Roy doesn't go smoothly through it, does he? He responds very, very well to pressure, but Ulysses just does it that much more comfortably. Now, there isn't much between them at the line, but it's worth pointing out that Barney Roy was getting £10 weight for edge here. He will be getting £7 on the Knavesmire in the Juddmonte. So he's going to have improved. The point of the weight for edge is that it narrows as the horse matures, and in theory, he should have matured a little bit more and found that improvement, but he's going to need to have found it in order to close that gap, I would think. And for me, Ulysses is the one that they've all got to beat in this race, because his form since this has been very good. That second to Enable in the King George, trying to give her plenty of weight. A very good performance from him there. I think he moved through that race very well, and he just found it too much of a test in really soft ground over that trip, and for me, coming back to 10 furlongs will be in his favour.
Do we look at Ulysses as if you can, a Sandown specialist? His last two successes over that course, and is there something about that track that suits him that perhaps York may not play to those strengths?
It doesn't worry me. I think he's got all the attributes to run very, very well at York, and for me, his run at Ascot in the King George is still a very, very good effort, trying to give that weight to an exceptionally good 3-year-old filly on ground that might not have been ideal for him. So for me, it's not too much of a concern. I think he'll properly transfer his form to York, which is basically a pretty fair track.
We can have a look at Barney Roy in action, winning action this time, for all he went very close in the Eclipse. This is in the St James's Palace, billed as a bit of a duel between he and, of course, Churchill, who was the Guineas winner prior to this on the wide outside. Now, Barney Roy wins this pretty comfortably in the end, but we must touch upon Churchill, who doesn't seem to give his running in this instance, and of course we didn't then get the chance to see him subsequently because of the bad weather at Goodwood. Yeah,
Barney Roy in the white cap down the outside, and he's a good winner here at Royal Ascot, but Churchill was below form. We don't really know why. A few potential explanations put forward, but nothing actually came into light in the public domain, at least, on the back of this display from Churchill. So he needs to bounce back. He'll be going up in trip, but he's by Galileo. He should have no problem staying. But Barney Roy wasn't far behind him in the Guineas when things didn't go his way to the same extent as they did Churchill. And I think that basically Barney Roy is a slightly better horse than Churchill.
You'd be willing to say that now, would you? And I suppose on what we've seen subsequently, he's just a better horse at this stage of the season than compared to, say, the Guineas form when it looked as though Churchill was the superior.
Yeah, the thing was with the Guineas, Churchill was further down the line of his racing development. He'd had more experience at that point, and the Guineas set up perfectly for him. Barney Roy, the Guineas didn't set up as well for him, and it was very early on in his racing career. So, and that track perhaps didn't suit him quite so well at Newmarket in the dip. So I think a few little things sort of weren't in the favour of Barney Roy that day to the extent that they were of Churchill. Barney Roy's progressed since. and Churchill arrives on the back of a disappointing display. For me, Barney Roy will get the better of that particular duel.
We can have a look at some fillies form next, and indeed some course form as well. We'll pick up the Musidora. Now, this was a nice performance from Shutter Speed. We'll highlight her there. Vintage Folly also for Hugo Palmer, just on the left of shot here, runs very well. But, well, where would you rate this form in comparison to what we've just seen from the Colts, Chris?
It's nowhere near as good, is it? I mean, this race, small field, wins it well enough here, does Shutter Speed, but nothing in this race has gone on one since. The race is yet to throw up a subsequent winner. It's not really this display that you're looking at Shutter Speed on, I suppose, so much as her earlier season form when she won at Newbury, very well backed, and she got the better of Raheen House and Enable that day. Now, obviously that was early season form. It's hard to say that it's entirely reliable, but she looked very good that day. And I think in France last time out, she was better than the bare result as well when things didn't quite go away. So she needs to bounce back, but she might. She's
beaten a subsequent classic winner and Group 1 winner in the form of Enable, and she beat the Bahrain Trophy winner Raheen House, as you mentioned. That was at Newbury. Has she actually gone on from that yet, in your mind, do you think? Is she yet to show that level of form again?
Yeah, she's not quite produced that level. As I said, I think she ran very well under the circumstances in France when she was last seen. She finished 4th in the Prix de Diane, and that race probably wasn't ideal in many ways. She travelled through that race very comfortably. A couple of things conspired against her, and she maybe didn't see the race out as well as you would have expected her to, but it was still a solid enough performance. I think her best form, it stacks up well, does that Newbury run at the start of the season.
And of course we didn't get to see her at Goodwood because of that worsening ground as well, so we look forward to seeing her. We'll also look at success days in the York Stakes, winning the Grey, who Chris can highlight just over on that far side. Where would you rate this level of form? And it's worth pointing out that Success Days did have the run of the race here, and is a potential pace angle going forward to this race.
Yeah, got the run of the race here and will be out to make the running once again. Quite hard to make the running at York. I know it's been done in this race when Arabian Queen caused a big surprise in this, but it is a tough set of tactics to pull out on the round course at York. This level of form, well, in behind you've got Mondial East. He's a Grade 1 winner, but in lower standard Grade 1s, I suppose, and Hathal in the places. They're well enough bunched up. It is going to take a big jump forward from that performance in order to see Success Days successful again on the Knersmire.
There's something about this race, isn't there, Chris, where you get the coming together again of the ages. You get the horses that haven't quite proved themselves over a mile and a half dropping back, the horses who perhaps find that mile a bit sharp going up. We've had some races of the ages in the past. I mean, this is shaping up to be a serious contest.
Fantastic race. I think in ratings terms, it is one of the best, if not the best, races in Europe and if not the world. So it is a race that has stacked up well in recent years in terms of high-level performances being produced, and I think you can expect more of the same this time around, given the quality of field that we've got coming into the race.
It looks an absolute cracker, and it should serve up a serious horse as a winner. That is our look at the International Stakes at York.